What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. All right, so look, man, I've said this before and I'll say it again. The original GOAT argument originated on social media. I would say about 20 years ago. Although you saw little bits of it on ESPN when Kobe would have the nine consecutive 40-point games, whatever it was. Is Kobe better at 25 than Mike, right? But the real actual GOAT debate in earnest started in the 2005-2006 season when Kobe went nuts that year, right? The 81-point game in particular. It started in basketball groups. It started in chat groups. It started on YouTube a couple years later on when Kobe had the back-to-back titles and all of a sudden had 5 championships at age 31, right? That's where it started. But at the very least, when those debates were going on, it was usually presented by people who knew what they were talking about, and it was a genuine debate. But once it was stolen from social media by mainstream media and they kicked Kobe out of the conversation and just replaced him with LeBron, back in 2012, LeBron was probably generally seen as, maybe a top 50 all time player, top 40. And then magically he got kicked up about 45 places or paces to number two and number one, right? And now you got all these grifters who just trying to make a name for themselves in this anti-Michael Jordan hate craze that goes on now. So you got these people who are making these old, antiquated 2017 arguments who are late to the ball, and they don't understand how ridiculous they sound. So you got Donatello here, and I call him that because he just reminds me of Donatello from the Ninja Turtles, just cracked out. And he's making this argument about how the 2017 Warriors and 2018 Warriors are such a dominant team that it's proof that the 90s competition was trash. Because who did Michael Jordan face that could beat that team, right? And it's just such a nauseating argument, man. But here it is.
Jordan faced no one, and that is not false. That's a fact. The reason why he never went to a game 7 because he played no one good. The teams were terrible, and that's a fact, bro.
Oh my god.
Lakers. Okay, name a great team that's better than Kevin Durant's. I'll wait right here. As soon as you tell me, I'm gonna shut the whole thing down. If you can tell me a team that can beat Kevin Durant's Warriors that Jordan played, any one of y'all, just tell me one.
Competition was
just name one.
Competition was a lot
different. He went to the finals 6 times. Name one.
We waiting. Competition was a lot different.
I'm waiting. Name one. He went to the finals 6 times.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
This is what bothers me about this. If I'm not mistaken, outside of Warriors fans or KD fans, wasn't everybody complaining about how unfair it was for that team to be comprised? Right? Wasn't everybody saying, look, man, is it fair to have a team that barely lost the championship to have acquired a guy that is seen as a top 3 all-time player? Or not all-time player, but top 3 player, top 2 player, perhaps, depending on how you're looking at it at the time, on that team. Like, is that truly fair to have all those guys in their primes? That was the argument. The argument is it fair to have all these guys together, 4 future Hall of Famers, all on one team in their prime? That was the argument. So how does that get compared to, well, name me a team in the 90s that could be? There was no team really in that era that could consistently beat that team, right? That's why I was so anticlimactic when KD won the championship, because, hey, everybody expected him to win, right? But if you really want to look at this thing from a truthful perspective, the Warriors went from 73 wins in 2016, NBA record, to I believe 65 wins in 2017, right? And then I think they went to 58 wins in 2018. And in 2019, they were at 57 wins. So how unbeatable was that team if they lost 20-some times in 2018 and 19? Is this the same Clippers team? Oh, excuse me, I'll get away with that one. Is this the same Warriors team that struggled with an AC Clippers team in 2019? Isn't this the same Warriors team that almost lost to a Rockets team in 2018? And outside of Chris Paul and James Harden, what other Hall of Famers is on that roster? So to make it like this team was completely unbeatable, that's hyperbole. They were beatable. They just whooped LeBron James' ass 8 out of 9 times. So you have to make this argument that they're this colossus that just, no team could ever beat. But I would gather that the 1993 Phoenix Suns could beat them. I'm pretty sure they could beat them. The 1993 Phoenix Suns had Charles Barkley. You had Kevin Johnson on that team. You had Dan Marley. And these aren't just names. Dan Marley was a 17, 18 point per game scorer. KJ give you 20 and 10 in his sleep. Charles Barkley was the MVP, averaging like 25 points and 12 rebounds, 5 assists. He put up 27, 13, and 6 in the finals, right? You had Richard Dumas, who, if it wasn't for his drug usage, would have been a perennial all-star level player. He was kicking Scottie Pippen's ass in that series. That team had Tom Chambers, who just a few years earlier was averaging 27 points a game against the competition in the NBA. Their team had Danny Ainge, right? And if I'm not mistaken, I believe during the regular season, was it that year? Let me look at something here. They had Mark West, who would have beat the hell out of, who would have done in any center that the Warriors had at that time. The 1993 Phoenix Suns also had a similar offensive rating, if I'm not mistaken, to the 2016 Warriors. So I'm trying to look at this team now. They also had Cedric Ceballos, and in his best years, he was putting up 18 to 20 points a game. He dropped 50 in the NBA. The other center was Oliver Miller. He's the guy that now, he wouldn't have done as well in today's league because of his girth. That was a very loaded team. And another thing, too, the 89 and 90 Pistons would have given the Warriors fits, especially if they were playing by the rules of the 80s and 90s. If they were playing by those measures, they mopped the floor with the Kevin Durant Warriors because they wouldn't have been able to deal with their physicality. The 1992 Knicks, the 1993 Knicks would have given the Warriors problems with their physicality, especially the 92 Knicks. If you got a front court that consists of Patrick Ewing, who on that Warriors team is going to guard Patrick Ewing? Draymond Green? Then you have Charles Oakley. You got Anthony Mason. Monsters. You have Xavier McDaniel, who was 6'8", 235. Man, they would have punked Draymond Green. They would have punked everybody on that damn team. Gerald Wilkins, a.k.a. the Jordan Stopper. You had John Starks. In 92, they still had Mark Jackson. They were coached by the great Pat Riley, who the coach circles around Steve Kerr What are we talking about here? Michael Jordan beat more 60-win teams in the playoffs than any other player in NBA history. The 1990s had, when Michael was playing against these teams, in 91, he went up against Magic Johnson and beat him. In 92, he went up against Clyde Drexler. In 93, he went up against Charles Barkley. Kevin Johnson, we all know, should be in the Hall of Fame. Tom Chambers should be in the Hall of Fame by today's standards. In 96, he beat Sean Kemp and Gary Payton. And in 97, 98, he beat Stockton and Malone. Right? The same Stockton and Malone who, on paper, beat a team that Donatello would swear they shouldn't have beaten. Because on paper, talent-wise, the Lakers were more talented than Stockton and Malone. But they used to whoop their ass. Because it's not always about talent. It's about matchups, it's about chemistry, and it's about execution. And the 90s had some of the best teams when it came to execution. Stockton and Malone had played on the same floor together for a decade by the time they go to the NBA Finals. That's chemistry. KD fitting with the Warriors, that's overkill. That's an overpowered entity. But hell, when you really look at it, should Donatello be complaining about anything? Because your boy is the king of stacking the deck. Because what he's doing right now is truly stacking the deck and having the media give him excuses. Because not only has he joined a team that has a guy that was an MVP just 3 years ago, in Joel Embiid, not only has he joined a team that has a guy who was a finals MVP just 2 years ago and was an MVP candidate this year. Not only did he join a team that had a guy average just 28 points a game last year, not only has he joined a team that has a guy who was third in Rookie of the Year voting this past year, but now there are reports that he wants to acquire Tyrese Halliburton on this team. So who the fuck are you, LeBron fan, to be talking about anybody stacking the deck? And by the way, KD joining that team is probably the equivalent of if Michael Jordan joined the Lakers, because he was the 88 MVP, right? That's pretty much the equivalent of him joining the Lakers after they lost to the Pistons in 89. But Kareem is in his prime. Magic is pretty much in his prime then. Worthy is in his prime. But Kareem is in his prime. Let's say Kareem is 29 instead of 42. Who could beat that team? And if Michael Jordan did do that, how would everybody react? Most people would say that Michael Jordan is joining a super team and it doesn't count. So come on, man. Using the KD Warriors as an excuse or as a reason to disqualify 90s competition. The 90s was everything that was the opposite of KD. It was strong competition, very strong competition, and it wasn't guys joining up with each other. You had strong teams. You had a strong talent pool. And the NBA was very competitive. Y'all just mad because these current players have more of the old school mentality when it comes to going to competing against each other. Y'all don't want the NBA to do what Victor Wembanyama and Jaylen Brown are doing, which is sacrificing money to help teams keep to keep the talent pool, sufficient to continue to keep winning. No, you don't want, and also y'all don't want these guys catching up with LeBron in championships. That's what that shit's about. Anyway, that's all I got to say about it. What you guys think?